Good day, nerds, and welcome to episode 43 of the Nerd Cantina Show. Today we've got a Cantina conversation. It's been a little while since we've been able to put together an interview, and this week we're joined by Ryan Hawk. Ryan Hawk is a young comic creator who's turned to Indiegogo and Kickstarter to get his career started. And we love supporting creators. We love hearing the stories from these individuals who are taking the steps necessary to get their name out there and get their art out there in the world.
Yeah, Ryan reached out to us because he listened to our episode with Felipe Caño, which was a blast to do with him. So he's a Cantina listener and reached out to us with his project. And we thought it'd be good to not only continue our Cantina conversation segments, because real life has been kicking us in the dink, but we were able to get this one out, and it was a fun interview. So we hope you enjoy.
You may notice a little background noise in there, and that's because, again, Ryan is he's a young man in college, and you can hear the noise of college life behind him at sometimes, and hopefully it's not too much of a distraction, but we appreciate him fitting us in, and it was an interesting conversation about a very interesting story and new take on Christmas that he's got coming out.
Yeah, we do what we can, folks. So bear with us.
So enjoy the episode, and without further ado, here's the interview with Ryan Hawk.
Calling back all nerds.
All right, well, good day, nerds. Thanks for joining us again for another Cantina conversation. And today we are honored to have Ryan Hawk with us today. Ryan is an author of some comic shorts, and he's an Indiegogo campaign going now for Bric-a-Brac, which is an interesting story that we'll dive into kind of some of the inspiration and some of the stories behind it, as well as understanding, again, from a creator's mindset, what's driving this. Without further ado, Ryan, how you doing?
Really good, man. Thanks so much for having me on the show. It means a lot.
I think we'll just start kind of back at maybe the beginning of some conversation around some nerd things, really what drove you into comics, and then we'll talk about your campaign and what you're trying to do there. So first, let's give you some nerd credibility here in the realm. What's your start with comics and your start kind of as a creator here?
So starting writing comics, I think I got into comics during the time where the DC New 52 was coming out, and so the whole push to make new books, and it was a time for me to kind of start from reading Batman from a new perspective, reading Superman, and starting with all these characters that I didn't know. So like the Green Lantern books were really helpful with getting into those new characters I always loved and wanted to read, but it just started as a good starting point, really, the New 52. And so that's really where I started to read comics. And in the back of a lot of those trade paperbacks, which I collected, they had script samples and sketches and, a lot of black, inks and pencils. And you started to get to see, and I know that's something that is common in a lot of these, trade paperback editions and stuff. But like, I started to see, well, this is something I really like, and I really think I could do eventually in my life. I'd love to do comics as some kind of a job, maybe, or as a passion. I mean, it became a huge passion for me. And so, as you saw, I've started to write a lot of short stories, and the short stories got bigger and bigger. And then I just completed a Indiegogo, or actually a Kickstarter campaign for a comic book with a lot of the short stories that you've probably seen, called The Unspeakable Text. It's I did have it on Instagram, and I posted 11, there are a lot of short horror stories from 3 to 7 pages. And I put that into a collection that was about 75 pages, and we got it on Kickstarter and succeeded. So that was a huge, huge success for me, and my first successful crowdfunding campaign, and a huge taste of what it's really like to do all this. And yeah, man, that's really where I started to get into comics, and I just have been going on from there.
So when the New 52 came out, what age were you about when you got this inspiration?
Yeah.
Just to make myself feel like an old asshole.
Well, I would say 2013 was when I kind of got into it. During the time where Scott Snyder was really deep into his Batman run. At that point, and I was in high school, I was a sophomore in high school, and then I really sought to be Scott Snyder, and then Grant Morrison, of course, and then you get all these. You start to Warren Ellis, and then oh my gosh, these guys are so awesome. I had a huge fandom of Peter Tomasi, because I thought Aquaman run was really awesome. And, there's just Peter David, of course, his Hulk stuff. You start to really acquire just all these guys put so much hard work into making characters they don't even own really awesome. And then, you see their independent work too. And it's just like, it's even cooler to see a lot. I mean, Grant Morrison, of course, is a huge inspiration too.
So you obviously kind of focus more on the writer's side of the comics as you got into it. So once you kind of honed in on the part of comics that you love, did you kind of shift your studies more towards writing and, did you start focusing like English heavy kind of courses, or did you just kind of wing it from there?
Yeah. Actually, what's interesting is I did go on, like my freshman year of high school, I did go on online and found this amazing program called Comics Experience. And it's a, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but it's basically an online school for people who want to write or edit or letter comics. I think they might even have an art division at this point. And it's run by like some pretty heavyweights. And one of the guys' name is Andy Schmidt, and he worked for Transformers comics on IDW, and he worked on a lot of heavy, like Annihilation. I think he edited or wrote or something like that. And he's a heavyweight. And so I took a writing course with him, and that was really inspiring. And then also with that, you got a 6-month subscription to the writing group, script writing group, where Chuck Dixon would comment occasionally on your stuff, where, these really, really amazing creators who, I love, because I was reading Nightfall at the time and I found it so surreal that he actually commented on one of my scripts on Reddit, and so that was a great thing. And eventually I just took writing really serious, and I got accepted into a boarding school for 2 years, my junior and senior year, with the right focus in writing. And so I just have been honing my craft ever since. And
you said that was freshman year of high school. You joined a writing
online
course and started.
Yeah. So that's when I really started. And
my high school experience was far less productive.
Well, I don't know, man. You kind of just get hit with the bug. I don't know. I don't really know how that all happened. I was just kind of looking for a way to learn, and it was really an awesome experience. And you don't have to get accepted into it. You can just. Yeah, I had my mom get me the course for, Christmas, whatever.
If you were taking writing courses as a freshman, and Ken, who was in the National Honor Society, considers his high school unproductive, I don't even want to describe what my high school experience was like.
Well, it really just comes down to, even when we talk about lack of production, I could have high academic success, but zero focus, right? And what it seems like that you found was focus. You had the right parents who were willing to just pay for the additional course, kind of get you there. And then you had some feedback that you respected within that community that kind of further stoked that fire and allowed it to go. And I think that there's a lot of issues with youth education, that sometimes we lack focus. We have this broad general education path, and then we don't ever actually seek an individualized plan. And it seems like you found something outside of the school system that really set you off on an area that now you're still continuing to pursue, and it really drove you at the age of 13 or something, starting down this path that you're doing now.
And it's pretty cool. I only ever 2 years ago, and now I'm 21. I just turned 21 now. So only 2 years ago, I really started actually getting my comic books done. Actually an artist started drawing it was almost 2 years ago when I actually had my first comic book done. So it took a very long time for all that work to translate into something tangible, and so that's something that is really important about being a comic book writer, is you have to make sure you're talking to artists and collaborating, because it can be lonely when you have all these scripts but yet no one to draw them. So I got really frustrated with that, and that's why I'm just so aggressive with crowdfunding. I feel like now is because, I've just always wanted artists, and I've always wanted to make my projects real.
So what did it look like? So before the Kickstarter campaigns, you have some of the, the shorts and things like that. Do you illustrate at all? Or are you completely reliant on the artistic talents of others?
Completely. Yeah. I've never really drawn into that, and I maybe tried a long time ago, but I think that, the passion for that just wasn't there, and I really started to focus on the writing aspect and kind of getting obsessed with. Well, and also when you're in campaign mode, you really are the ringleader of the campaign. You know, my artist, yeah, he retweets it every once in a while, but you are really the business side. You have to hustle. You have to, you know, show, you know, you have to do a lot of the work, especially in campaigns. And then, you know, and also you have to edit everything too. So as an independent writer, I feel like you have a lot more than just writing under your belt. So there's a lot more going on.
No, so how did you find those first artists, say before you even your first successful campaign? You know, you got to start to build that portfolio that exists out there somewhere. How did you find those first artists? How did you go ahead and bring to life your
you know,
scripts?
Like when I first got into college, I just, you know, I had a summer job, so I was able to pay someone to do like a 4 or 5 page story. And then, you know, I started to share it around with people, and then people liked it and wanted to collaborate with me for no money. And so, you know, you start kind of building a trust with people who want to build up their portfolio just like you want to. And, you know, that's very easy, just reaching out to people on Instagram or, you know, on ArtStation or DeviantArt. And you just start reaching out to those people and showing them your work. And yeah, it does seem like it's hard, but there's people who want to build up their portfolio everywhere. People are hungry to, you know, create something awesome, and they just don't know where to start. So when you kind of make, you know, obviously there are people who are like, you're not going to pay me, but of course there are also people who are just like, you know, I'm in your same position. Let's make something together. And then obviously with the amazing thing with crowdfunding, you can pay those artists again. And, you know, kind of, so it's just it was a really interesting experience. And it was hard to get a lot of artists to, you know, collaborate, but that's the beauty of writing short stories, is that it's not a huge commitment. It's not like saying, oh, we're going to work on this huge thing. And no, it's just a small little story. So that was the beauty of building up that portfolio. And this campaign is actually the first full length story really I've ever told before in comic book form.
So when you come up with your short stories, a lot of writing, you know, is told in a certain narrative, especially when you write like novels and books and things. Did you find it complicated to take the story that was in your head and build a comic outline or a comic strip? Because it's a very different form of writing.
Yeah. Well, you definitely have to think visually, because like, and you also have to think about when you're writing a comic book, like how many panels you want, because it can get very tedious if you have the same amount of panels on the same, like if you have the same amount of panels on the same like page every other page. So it does get very tedious, and you have to definitely think about like that consistency. That's one of the very important things about writing comics, but also, yeah, just thinking visually is really important, and thinking about like page reveals too, which is a huge part of comics. Is like, you don't want to spoil a character reveal or an important moment on the bottom of a page, and you know you're reading, and then it's already been spoiled for you. So you want to make sure that's at the top. You know, it's like little things that are kind of mathematical almost, that you just want to make sure comics are visually appealing. And that was something it took me a long time to learn. And it's still something I'm trying to learn, because it's an art that is kind of a silent art. It's behind the writing. It's the actual, it's the comic book element of the writing, really. I mean,
was this something that the course you took kind of gave you pointers on, and kind of gave you a heads up on, this is, you know, these are the problems you're going to have to overcome when writing a comic? Or was this something you found out between trial and error?
I think it's both. Yeah, trial and error for sure. Because when, you know, you see the finished product, you kind of figure out, well, you know, that could have been more effective, or, you know, that I tried to pull this specific, I tried to narratively make this specific thing happen, but it didn't really work out, at least in my perspective, the way that I want. You're trying to convey information visually, and then the word balloons are really just supposed to help. That's the thing about comics that is so like important, is like, if you take out all the word balloons, you would still understand what's going on. And my first couple of comics, they really relied on those word balloons. So, you know, as you get better, and honestly, as your artists just get better too, you learn to tell stories very visually. And, you know, sometimes you can skip a lot of dialogue with just a simple action in the comic book. So, you know, you can show a lot of emotion with just a movement, or it's a constant process of giving and taking. So, you know, it's a very interesting medium, like with that sense. So yeah, it's just, You have to get in and make comics to really learn it. But I mean, I haven't really heard of. I mean, Scott McCloud, I guess, probably talks about it. I haven't read all his book, but that book that he wrote that is very influential. I'm sure he talks about this kind of language that you really have to learn as a comic book writer. So,
when you talk about capturing via image and the sequencing of the images or whatever else really being the biggest driver towards telling your story. So you're writing the story and you're relying on the artist to take those cues of what you want to accomplish. Now, how much of that are you explicitly spelling out, say in your script, that here's certain panels that I want to accomplish a certain image? Or are you giving the general broad feeling and you're hoping the artist translates that well?
So for usually when I started writing, obviously I was alone and I didn't have people to drew my scripts. So when you learn to understand your artist and what they like, you alter your script. So for example, with this project, my artist doesn't speak English very well and he has to use a translator. So what I've done is really use what's called the Marvel method, which is kind of you basically give a general description in a very simple way, and then you add the word balloons on later. So when he's done with the art, I will add the word balloons on later. And the first initial script is very, very simple, no word balloons at all, and kind of just conveys a very simple story. And then he takes that and makes it into what it is. Then you put it on the word balloons later. And then with a lot of the other short stories, though, it was full script. And, you should, at least as a comic book writer, ask your artist, hey, what are you comfortable with? I want to give you the most freedom you deserve because, you're the artist and I don't want to cover up your art with a bunch of word balloons. So, it's just all, again, a give and take and just really understanding your artist's strengths and weaknesses and your strengths and weaknesses too. So
during the process of taking your story, because I've been in the process of writing my own. I have two stories that I want to try to put in comic form and get out there, and we've talked on the show about doing the same kind of Kickstarter route. And I've, in the beginning stages, have found that the tasks to go from even just story in your head to pre-production are pretty daunting. You have to find the artist. Then depending on the artist, you might have to find an inker, a colorist. You have to find a letterer to actually do the lettering and the word bubbles. What was the most challenging thing that maybe caught you off guard or that you weren't really prepared for, that if you had to do it again, you'd tell yourself like, hey, make sure you lock this down because this was a pain in my ass?
Well, I honestly think that one of the things is having a platform is really important. Like when I was first doing my little mini comics, I don't know if maybe even 50 people saw them. And then, my solution was that put them on Instagram. But again, I didn't really understand that. So I guess at first I really wish I would have respected Webtoon more, because I think that there is a huge, when you're first putting out comics and they're all digital and stuff like that, I think Webtoon is an important place to put them. So I think one of your question to answer is the delivery mechanism. Look at all your options. There's Tapas, there's Webtoons, there's so many things you can put out. Like Kickstarter is not just the only option. Is it you have to ask, is this book really supposed to be in print? And, that's one thing. But another thing is lettering and finding the right letterer is essential, and I'm really lucky to have had a really great letterer. But at first I was just doing it on my own and it didn't look very good. And I was just putting it into a little system and I had no idea what I was doing. So, lettering can definitely affect a comic book in a very, very important way, because it is what is carrying the dialogue and stuff like that. So I think most comic readers, when they look at their comic, they just assume that it's like a two-man show. Like one dude wrote it, the other dude draws it. Exactly.
And then I get a comic. And when you get really into it, it's far more complicated than that. And I don't think a lot of the people who are reading them are listening.
And I think I would take probably the same approach, because I'm ignorant and I don't know what it takes. And, you talk about how you tried doing the lettering first. I look at it and I'd say, oh, I could do that. I could throw some letters in a word bubble and be fine. I don't need to pay somebody to do that, because how hard is it to do that in today's, there's so many apps, so many different electronic mediums to be able to do that myself. And, but like you said, there's a professional will do it better.
Right.
And you should probably just hire somebody.
Yeah, it is a silent art. It's really odd how much it actually changes a book. Like, I think a really good example is, and people always talk about it, like the Alan Moore Miracle Man. Apparently, it's some of the best of Alan Moore's work, but at the same time, it has like really, really horrible lettering. So it's just really interesting how that can really affect people's perspective on a certain, comic like that. I mean, a lot of people love and revere it, but it's just the lettering doesn't hold up. So it's very interesting.
So now that we've kind of gotten a little bit about your background, why don't we dive into what you're currently working on and where your inspiration came from?
For sure. This campaign is an Indiegogo campaign for my book, Bric-a-Brac. So it is a Christmas fantasy story. It's the first part of the 3-part story. So there's 2 more editions to come. And it is basically Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Star Wars in a mishmash kind of comic book, I guess. It is really it's embracing a lot of holiday tropes, and obviously it has a lot of holiday characters in it, and it has something to say about Christmas and its importance, but it also, it has intergalactic elements. It's a very exciting book. It has a lot of amazing art, and it's just a very personal story to me.
Yeah, if I had a nickel for every time I had somebody look for a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer Star Wars crossover, I'd be a rich man.
Yeah, right. It's just such a common thing, right? Yeah, that was one of the challenges, was just advertising it to people, especially, now. I mean, obviously Christmas is coming, but, a lot of people are not ready for it, but you have to find different ways. You have to find different ways to advertise it to people. But that's what I found my most surprising. People are most surprised by that pitch is, Rudolph. At least I would say Rankin and Bass. Frosty the Snowman. That tone plus Star Wars is what this book is. It's definitely a children's book.
Whole bunch of public domain characters.
Right, exactly. So there you go. That's what it is.
Well, and looking over some of like your past works and stuff, you've got some very interesting short stories, those shorter comics, like on your webpage you have Cereal Wars and the No Sandman and stuff, and it really you transition from kind of a really lighthearted kid story like Cereal Wars to No Sandman, which is a bit creepy, and and then you've got your Kickstarter that you said was largely a horror. What type of is this latest story? Is this just one of your many interests, or is really this kind of the narrative that you prefer to tell?
I honestly just think about what I want to tell at any given moment and just go with it. Like, I've always loved Christmas, so I felt that I had this amazing opportunity. My friend Raphael, he said, I'm ready to do it. Let's do it. And we decided this is the time to make this book. It's now or never, because, he's an amazing artist, and who knows what will happen. I mean, I wish him all the blessings in the world, but who knows, like, he could get picked up by, he's just that good, and I'm not that great, but he's amazing. So let's get it out there, And so, we're coming in with this book, and I guess I just have always had a fascination with Christmas, and then also to add on to that, people's opinions of it, people telling you what to like and what not to like about it, of certain aspects of it, and so it's just a really interesting time, and I think it's very colorful and it demands attention, and it's just super. It almost writes itself in some ways, because there's so much mythology about Christmas, and like you said, the public domain characters are established, so it's just about turning them into essentially like ideologues, and like a lot of them have different perspectives about Christmas that might be different from what you've seen before. Like Santa might be different than who you thought he was, or the Nutcrackers, who used to be, at least in Tchaikovsky's ballet, obviously really happy figures. They are essentially stormtroopers in this new take on them. So it's just, it's about flipping what and also making a new conversation. But it's something that kids and adults can like at the same time. So
it's droids in Toyland.
Exactly.
Well, and like you have, I was to say on your page there, you've got if you go to the Indiegogo campaign and search for Bric-a-Brac, you'll see that the image of Santa there is not the image of Santa that we grew up with either.
Yeah,
it's pretty badass Santa.
Yeah, he's called Father Christmas in this, because I wanted to definitely embrace that woodland. I don't know, like I really always loved the take of him in like the Narnia book, and I thought like how cool it was to have him in Narnia, but also like he's very practical, and he's a gift giver, but he's almost like he's not commercialized in that take on him. So I just found that I wanted to build on that, and then I love the idea of reindeer who look literally like evolved Pokemon, and that's essentially what those reindeer are. They look literally like the highest evolution of a Pokemon, and I love that because they're supposed to be legendary figures. Like one of the things I don't like about Rudolph and all those little puppet characters is they don't look older than time. I mean, they're like immortal reindeer. So like, why don't they look like that? I mean, they would have gnarly antlers, and that's why we kind of made it look a lot different.
So you mentioned Pokemon, Narnia, Star Wars. We got the public domain Christmas theme. So is there anything else that you kind of pulled for inspiration for this story? I mean, because it's a pretty wide gamut. I'm almost wondering if there's anything between Pokemon and Christmas that we missed.
I think, like you said, like those Rankin and Bass movies, Little Drummer Boy, or Year Without a Santa Claus. The thematic or the plot elements in that story, like for example, like Rudolph Shiny New Year, for example, Rudolph has to find baby New Year, and he has to go through you meet all these different people to get there. And that's really what this story is too. So even from a plot structure, it almost it's very inspired by those classic Christmas specials that's about like a young character going to do something and meeting all these different ideologues, people with different ideologues and reacting to them. So obviously our main character is a 10-year-old boy, but he meets people who hate Christmas, who love Christmas, who want to take over his planet and want who really just want to end him, or to, a lot of different concepts of Christmas. And, it's just a really interesting story that I think the intergalactic element of it definitely adds a more dangerous, unique aspect to it. So, it's not quite like those stories. The stakes are a lot higher because there's a war, obviously. So that, it definitely makes it a little different too.
The art in itself, so the samples on the Indiegogo campaign and things that you show, and we've talked about it when we've interviewed other comic creators and things, is that people come for the art. They buy things, they pick it up initially because the art is what catches the eye. And then you hope they stick around because they enjoy the story. Yeah. So finding Raphael, it looks like he does have a great art, very colorful. Like you said, if you're seeing this as, you said it's a children's book. I don't know what age child you're talking about.
I would say like,
with this,
8 years old, maybe 10 years old, that range, because that's the range of my age when that really inspired me to tell this story to begin with. But obviously, this whole the tone in this story, it definitely is for both adults and children. But there's no, it is definitely like a Pixar movie that kind of has different, themes that adults can, understand and get kind of emotionally attached to as well. So, it's got a lot. It's kind of it's difficult to write children's books like that. But when you're dealing with Christmas and a time that's so important to so many children and adults alike, it's very easy to kind of write a story and culminate a bunch of characters that really have, they're good people. There are a lot of good people, and it's just really fun to create. It's easy. What I'm saying is it's just really easy to make a children's book with Christmas properties. It's not difficult because, again, those public domain characters just cater towards children, and the mythos of Santa Claus is, of course, about children.
Well, and those characters have been used for decades, so we all have our kind of preconceived notions going in when you see a Rudolph themed character or a Frosty kind of themed character. Yeah. We all have our our own vision of what that character is going into the story. So to have a fresh take on it is a little bit of a risk sometimes, because if it goes against the norm that you have in your head too much, it might turn you off. But at the same time, having a fresh take on a character that you thought you knew before is also can be really rewarding in the end.
And this is not like it's bad Santa, it's not like that, and there's no disrespect to those kind of taking Santa in a different tone, like a darker tone. It's not like that. It's just to kind of say, what if Santa was like this, and what if there was a war? What if there was something threatening the idea of Christmas? Like, how would it all be, and how can I show the value of these Christmas objects within this war? How can my main character kind of have his opinion changed about different things, and how can I, again, the main purpose is to just show that there's value in every different take on someone, like on every different take of Christmas, and the values of Christmas are super important to enlist in life, like giving and sharing, but also being with family, and it's about all of that. Obviously, it's about a lot of things, Christmas itself, because, but it is really just, the story is pretty much about just how to enlist those values in your life. And that's what our main character learns, because he's a young man, he's a young boy, but he, again, runs into a lot of people who have different opinions than him. And, at first he lives on an isolated island with fairies, right? And so, as you see in those pages, the Nutcrackers invade his home, and he's basically thrown into a world where he doesn't know anything. He doesn't know truly anything about the world that he inhabits, and he finds out. And so his goal is to trek the world and find Father Christmas to get his list of wishes to him that will end the war. But, obviously he doesn't know anything about this world at all. So he, has a lot to kind of understand and a lot to come to grips with, because the adults are not happy. They're in a war. They have to fight. There's rebellions against the Nutcrackers. There's so many different sides. So, it's going to be interesting to see him go through all of it and see what he becomes at the end as well.
Now, for many of people, Christmas has religious tones, but it is overwhelmingly became a non-denominational kind of holiday that everybody loves to participate in. Do you focus at all any bit on the religious aspect of Christmas?
Absolutely. So there's a character, Good King Wenceslas, and he's someone that we get, because this, again, like what you're saying, this is, my objective is to definitely talk about Christmas on all different planes. So, like you said, the Christian version of Christmas, or the one that is commercialized, or, just people love to celebrate. Yeah. It's all about that, and it's about bringing value into both. So both people can enjoy both ideologues of Christmas. But there's the character named Good King Wenceslas, and he has a goal where he believes that a Christ figure is coming to Planet Christmas, and he's going to be born in this, candy little area, because it's a Christmas story, so obviously there's candy places and stuff, and we're not going to have like a birth going on because it's a so it's kind of like so he's going to be born in this,
no wise men and mangers,
but so he believes that this is happening, so he enlists the help of the ghosts of Christmas present, past, and future to kind of figure out where it's going to happen, how it's going to happen. And so that's a little side story that, it becomes the main story too, because Garrett has to deal with Good King Wenceslas, and he's a good person, but he also, he wants people to believe that this is happening. And he doesn't want people to celebrate the commercial Christmas. He wants people to believe that in what he believes is happening is happening. So, that complicates his character, and, so definitely we're bringing in all aspects of what's celebrated as Christmas, because I grew up as like a Lutheran, and people told me, oh, you can't celebrate Santa, you can't like Santa, you can't do that kind of stuff. But I loved it, and I also loved the story of, the Nativity. So it's just, again, my 10-year-old self was like in conflict. And there was like, it's just kind of, this story is really just about those conflicts that I was thinking of as a 10-year-old kid, but in a comic book form. And so there's all elements of Christmas are talked about, because I don't want to leave any of it out, because it is a holidays are, they are holy days, so let's talk about what exactly are different people's perspective on this. So
Okay. So you started off with an interest in comics that got you into writing. You've now produced short stories and have your own comic going. Are you still into comics yourself? Like, do you still keep current and read?
Oh yeah.
Or are you getting too busy for that?
Well, I really just have been swept up with indie comics really now. I think the scene is just so exciting. And, you look on Indiegogo and you just see some amazing projects. So, and, I love, I like what they're doing at DC and Marvel and Image, and there's some really great books, and I love checking those out. But, some of the things on Indiegogo almost look better to me. Like, for an example, a book that just absolutely struck me was Monster MD, which was recently on Indiegogo, and it just has some of the best art, I think, by Marco McCagney. The art is just like unbelievable, buttery smooth. Like, I don't think I've seen anything. I don't even know if I've seen anything in the past year from DC that looked that good. But it's all about just what really speaks to me at a certain time. But I think right now I'm really interested in Indiegogo and just supporting indie creators, because I know how difficult it is to be one. I think is the true thing. Is like when you sought to be a writer who works for DC or Marvel, you always say, "Oh, they're so lucky." But when you're doing crowdfunding comics, you realize how much of a burden and how difficult it can be. And so you literally just want to reach out and hug anyone who can do it, and successfully at that. It's very difficult to do it even.
Yeah, I have a few friends. I have a few friends in the industry, mostly on the art side of it, and I can definitely attest to. There's not a lot of luck that goes into it. It's mostly a lot of hard goddamn work.
Oh yeah,
and these people, persistence. You have to be persistent, and you have to really put the work in. Like, you're not just gonna bump into somebody on an elevator, give them an elevator pitch, and say, "Oh, you should come work for DC. That'd be a great comic."
Yeah.
Like, nope, not going to happen.
Yeah, and the indie scene right now, especially with crowdfunding, Indiegogo, Kickstarter, it's just so exciting. I think there's a lot, and we're just pioneering. We're just starting. It's just the beginning. And, obviously there's late books, and, that takes away customers, and we need to iron out these things. We need to kind of say, hey, we need to get these books out. But when that happens, when that ironing out happens of the process, I think we will get to a point where, crowdfunding, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, this might be one of the main sources of comics. It could be where the most exciting comics come out in the next 10 years. So you never know. And obviously that's not, DC might even come. I know Sean Gordon Murphy, he's bringing a book to Indiegogo. Who would have thought that was going to happen? Sean Gordon Murphy, practically the Frank Miller of today, he is coming to Indiegogo. That's so interesting to me, and I just think it speaks to this renaissance that's happening. And so, to answer the question, it's just a lot of my comic reading has been on those kind of things, getting the books back and just absolutely loving it. But I have to say, I've been definitely because it's Halloween time, I've been reading The Demon by Jack Kirby, because I love Etrigan, and I think that he's amazing. And I'm going to try to get to the, what is it? Who's the other guy's name? The guy who did it in the 90s. I forget his name. But Etrigan, I've been reading that from DC right now. But that's the only DC thing I've been reading. But yeah, a lot of indie comics.
I'm just wrapping up the House and Powers of X that Hickman, I think it is, is doing.
Uh-huh.
And those are phenomenal. We're 80 years in, to comics, and people are still able to tell original stories and captivate readers. And
absolutely, yeah.
It's a testament to human creativity. I think that we're able to keep churning these out this way.
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely. Tip our hat to you creators. That's why we do a lot of these interview segments with creators is, we understand the amount of work that you guys put in and want to give you guys a platform to help you guys out. 'Cause it can be daunting at times trying to put yourself out there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And, I wanted to ask just a quick question on, so you had a successful Kickstarter campaign, and then this time around you're choosing Indiegogo. what's the driving force between one platform or the other?
Okay, so it's kind of a long story. So one of the I actually did launch this book on Kickstarter in September, but unfortunately we had to refund everybody because we did reach our goal, but it was through some pledges that people couldn't deliver on, and I guess things kind of happened. People didn't necessarily have the money they said they did have, and I guess we were kind of grinched, I guess is the best way to explain it. And so all the money was refunded.
Keeping with the Christmas theme.
Exactly. Yeah, it was very, that someone said you were grinched, and I'm like, that's the best way to describe it while also keeping, positive. So we were grinched, and you have to pick yourself up from that because you're going to have a lot of losses in this crowdfunding game, and it's not for the faint of heart. It's definitely going to take a pound of flesh because it's not easy work. You have to really, like you said, hustle and get on things. And so, and also another benefit to Kickstarter and Indiegogo is that I'm in complete control. If I had this idea and it was given to somebody else, they might not like the Good King Wenceslas idea. They might not like the evangelical talkings of different Christmas ideologues. And so that keeps your integrity. That keeps the integrity of the book if you want to see it out the way you did. So I went on to Indiegogo instead, and I just decided let's put on a flexible goal. And also another reason for that is I didn't have a lot of success on Kickstarter, and already we're not even halfway there, and I've reached what I've reached on Kickstarter before I got the kind of fake pledges. And so basically, I just think that there's a lot of heat on Indiegogo. And during the time, also, I will have to say, on Kickstarter, there were 3 times as many in September, 3 times as many projects that were on, as well as that definitely complicated some things. And because people were like, these projects are awesome and I want to support them, but I can't support all of them. And that's definitely, the flooding is a difficult issue. And September is notorious in crowdfunding for that time, but also there were the union things that were happening during that month and still now. And I think I've had a lot of people tell me, if you put it on Indiegogo, I'll definitely support you. So I did that. I went ahead and did that. And, so far, again, like I said, we've had a lot more success. Although Kickstarter is definitely a fan generator, the fans might not necessarily be people who are fans of comics. They might just be fans of you. So the thing about Indiegogo is that there's a lot of people who are legit just fans of comics. So, it's definitely a give and take, and I'm never done with Kickstarter because, I can always go back and who knows, get some more, like, let's say, like I do Brick or Brack number 2, do it on Indiegogo, and then go have a run of, like, let's say we make our goal like $1,000 on Kickstarter and still get that fan audience. So, it's a give and take. I just decided on Indiegogo because of that issue, but also because, again, like I said, I feel like the projects on there are just really amazing, and I wanted to be a part of it. So I feel like I'm doing way better. I am doing way better than I did on Kickstarter. So, it's just about go where the money is,
Yeah, we've done a few of these creator interviews, and the first one is he's using Webtoons. The second one we did was using Kickstarter. So yeah, you're the third now to use Indiegogo. So we've had kind of like 3 different perspectives of the pros and cons and things like that. So it's definitely interesting to hear. Oh yeah, and hear why you chose Indiegogo.
It's I think Indiegogo gives you more tools. Like Kickstarter definitely, they limit the tools you can have. So for example, Indiegogo gives you in demand, which if you reach your goal, you basically make what's essentially a marketplace, but for free. So like you obviously have to pay for Shopify and these kinds of things, but if you make your goal, you actually get a free marketplace. And so that's amazing. And you can sell all your tiers, edit your tiers, pretty much make a brand new campaign while, obviously keeping track of all the money you've made, which is an amazing thing. And then it also allows you to extend your time period. So it's helped a lot of people maybe reach stretch goals or, even succeed in their campaign with the ability to, extend it. And also it gives the idea of the flexible goal. And, I just think that's a really cool thing that you were able to kind of take whatever you make. That can be a difficulty if you're promising different things to different people, but at the same time, you always have the choice to refund if you don't feel that you have the money suitable to see the project through. So, I feel like Indiegogo just gives you more tools. Kickstarter definitely says you only get to touch this and we do the other stuff, So, again, it's just a give and take.
Yeah, I looked at, I didn't know much about what the flexible goal is that Indiegogo allows, but, essentially that you get to keep the money even if you don't meet the goal. And as like a consumer, I worry about that. I worry about, your goal should have been the minimum amount needed to see this project actually be delivered. And then if they allow you to not meet your goal but still keep the consumer's money, I actually wondered how does that work? If you didn't make enough money to actually go into production and fulfill the tiers,
that's a weird thing.
Then what do you owe that consumer?
The thing about making a goal too is that shouldn't necessarily be the money that you need to make the project. It should be the money it shouldn't be the money you want to make the project. It should be the money you need. So, obviously I had to pay out of pocket a lot for this project, and I will eventually too have to pay more out of pocket. It's definitely an expense. So it's not, you should kind of put your goal as to something that's what you can afford. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be what I absolutely want to have. So it should be what you need to have to actually make the book happen. And, obviously some people go above and beyond that. Some people don't. And so that's why it's always safe to keep it as something what you need. And, you have your financial backbone to because you obviously had to prop the book up. You should be able to send it through with your income. And so, it's just, that's kind of why the flexible goal, I think, was created. But you're right. There's definitely people who aren't prepared and don't understand that, are not ready. So there are definitely concerns.
So with all that said, why don't you give everybody a final chance to, check you out? So it's, your comics on Indiegogo. Do you have a Twitter?
Yeah.
You have the Instagram. Where if people are trying to look up your other projects, where can they find that?
So I do have a Twitter, which is where you can basically find all of my stuff. So at HAACK_pro. And I'm trying to make YouTube videos. I'm trying to, because obviously when you have a YouTube presence, I do feel like you can engage with people more, and that's what a lot of crowdfunding people have seen is when you're on live streams, you can talk to people who are your fans or your backers. I'm trying to get more active on that. On Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn with just my name. I'm trying to, push on LinkedIn too, because I think that it's a more professional space that people take for granted, but I've gotten a lot of backers from it with this project in particular. So, I'm pretty much everywhere.
Well, great. And we'll have links to all of that in the show notes on the nerdcantina.com. Again, we'll look forward to seeing the final story for Brick and Brack, and then hopefully this gets fully funded and you can proceed to part 2 and 3. Is the timing for part 2 and 3? Are we looking at this being a kind of next Christmas? You're looking at part
honestly,
2, or is it?
I think because the book is definitely more about the idea of Christmas and the concept of it, and not the holiday. We might even launch honestly in June, or maybe even in May, because I want to get the book out. And like I said, Raphael, it's the time. It's, you got to do it while it's hot, and, because then you could just never continue the story. So I think, honestly, May will be the time when we're going to get the second part, and then again in November, October, when the third part is going to come out. So, and then
wrap up the third part.
Yeah, and with that third part, we're going to have a trade paperback collecting everything. So hopefully, that's the goal. But, that would be maybe the main goal. And hopefully by that time I have enough, enough backers and enough of a tribe to actually see that through. That's the hardest part, but you have to just spend time developing a fan base.
Well, the first one's the hardest one to get funded, right? So if they like the first one, they'll come back to see the second. So if you should be confident that if you hit this mark that you should be able to carry that through. I think
we are going to hit it for real. So that's pretty exciting. I mean, obviously we've been through a lot with this whole Grinch situation, but you know what? We're going through it, and you have to fight for what you want. You have to, especially with crowdfunding. So it's all blessings,
Yeah, this industry is not for the weak-hearted.
Exactly.
Well, we appreciate your time and definitely find what you're doing as kind of inspiration. You're a young man who's taken, again, you've known the direction that you've wanted to go for a long time, and you're attacking it with a certain level of passion and figuring it out as you go. But you're producing some great comics and getting your art out there. So continue doing what you're doing. We'll be here to support you, and we'll ensure that anybody that we can get out there to get out there and fund.
Thank you so much.
The best of luck.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Well, thanks again, Ryan. All right, nerds. Well, thank you for listening, and hopefully you enjoyed the story and enjoyed the interview with Ryan Hawk. I think the big takeaway from this is if you have a story in your head or something that you want to tell, as we've seen with Ryan's interview today, previous interviews with Sean Mullen, who's using Webtoons as his platform, Felipe Cano, who's killing it over at Kickstarter, is that if you have a passion for this, you just need to take the steps and get your art out there. There's so many tools out there available to creators today that there's no reason to not get your art in front of people. See if it catches on. Hopefully you all go check out the Indiegogo campaign, which you can find the links for that on thenerdcantina.com/show43. That'll take you to the show notes where you can click on all the links for Ryan's website and social media, as well as the Indiegogo campaign. Get out there and support nerd creators and bolster our community. And as always, if you have not subscribed or rated and reviewed the podcast, please do so, as that will help bolster our Nerd Cantina community and get us to a greater reach within the podcasting world. Thanks again, and join us next week for weekly news.